The champagne flute felt cold in Bianca Thorne's hand as she stood at the edge of the gala, watching the glittering crowd of former college friends celebrate their 5-year reunion with the kind of ease that came from success and security, two things that had eluded her lately. She'd almost skipped tonight, almost pretended the cream-colored invitation with its embossed gold lettering had gotten lost in the mail, but pride had a way of making terrible decisions feel necessary. Her black dress was 3 years old, altered twice to fit different versions of herself, but it still looked elegant enough under the crystal chandeliers of the Metropolitan History Museum's main hall, and that would have to be enough. Bianca. The voice cut through the orchestral music like a blade she'd been expecting but dreading. I didn't think you'd actually show up. She turned to face Marcus Whitley, her ex-boyfriend of 4 years, the man who'd proposed to her junior year and then rescinded it senior year when he decided her lack of family connections and her struggling art career weren't compatible with his future in corporate law. He looked exactly as polished as she'd imagined, his suit probably worth more than her monthly rent, his hand resting possessively on the waist of a blonde woman whose diamond engagement ring caught the light like a tiny disco ball. Marcus. She kept her voice level. Pleasant, the way she'd practiced in her bathroom mirror. Good to see you. Is it? He stepped closer, and she caught the familiar scent of his cologne, expensive and sharp. Still alone, Bianca? I heard about the gallery closing. Tough break. But I suppose some people just aren't built for my apologies for the delay, beloved. The voice that interrupted was deep, accented with something old and unplaceable, and it sent an inexplicable shiver down Bianca's spine. The valet took longer than anticipated. A hand settled on the small of her back, warm through the thin fabric of her dress, and she turned to see a man who shouldn't exist outside of Gothic paintings or fever dreams. He stood well over 6 feet, his frame lean but powerful beneath a perfectly tailored black suit that made Marcus's expensive ensemble look like a costume. But it was his appearance that stole her breast skin pale as moonlight on snow, hair that fell just past his shoulders in waves of pure white, and eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian in the chandelier light. His face was beautiful in the way of carved marble, all sharp angles and aristocratic features, ageless and impossible. He smiled at her, and for a moment she forgot that Marcus existed, forgot that she was supposed to be humiliated and small. The stranger's smile was gentle, conspiratorial, as though they shared a secret the rest of the world wasn't privy to. She didn't know what to say, but his hand pressed slightly against her back, reassuring. You must be Marcus. The stranger's attention shifted, and his smile changed into something else entirely, something that made Marcus take an involuntary step backward. Bianca has mentioned you, though I confess, her descriptions were far more generous than warranted. Marcus's face flushed red. And you are? Alaric Sangre. He said it like a title, like a challenge. His arm moved from Bianca's back to her waist, drawing her closer against his side. Though I prefer to keep our private affairs relatively private. You understand, of course. The blonde woman tugged on Marcus's sleeve, whispering something urgent that Bianca couldn't quite hear. Marcus's expression shifted from anger to something that looked unsettlingly like fear, and he backed away with a mumbled excuse, practically dragging his fiancée toward the opposite side of the hall. Bianca stood frozen as the mysterious stranger Alaric released her, stepping back with a slight bow that seemed both antiquated and entirely natural coming from him. Forgive the intrusion, he said, his accent wrapping around the words like silk. But I have little tolerance for men who belittle what they were never worthy of possessing in the first place. Thank you. The words came out breathless. But who are you? Why did you? I saw you standing alone, saw the way that fool approached you with cruelty in his eyes, and I found I could not simply observe. His dark eyes met hers, and she felt pinned by the intensity in them. Sometimes the universe arranges fortuitous encounters. I am Alaric Sangre, and I am very pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Thorne. How did you know my name? I heard him say it. Alaric tilted his head slightly. Would you care to take a walk with me? This hall is beautiful, but suffocating with so many bodies pressed together. Every rational instinct told her to decline, to thank him again and retreat to the bathroom where she could call an Uber and escape this entire disastrous evening. But there was something in his gaze, something ancient and knowing and impossibly compelling, that made her nod. They walked through the museum's halls, past roped-off exhibits of medieval armor and Renaissance paintings, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. Alaric moved with a grace that seemed almost inhuman, his presence commanding despite the silence between them. Finally, they reached a gallery dedicated to European history, specifically a section on folklore and superstition. Do you believe in monsters, Bianca Thorne? Alaric asked, stopping before a painting of a pale figure standing over a sleeping maiden, fangs bared toward her throat. That's an odd question for a first conversation, she said, trying to keep her tone light despite the way her heart had started racing again. Perhaps. But humor me. She studied the painting, the dramatic strokes of red against darkness, the terror and ecstasy blended in the maiden's expression. I believe people can be monstrous. I've seen enough cruelty to know that. A pragmatic answer. He moved closer to the painting, and in the dim gallery lighting, his skin seemed to glow faintly. But what of the literal? Vampires, werewolves, creatures that go bump in the night. Those are stories. Metaphors for disease or fear, or she paused, really looking at him for the first time since they'd left the gala hall. The way his chest didn't seem to rise and fall with breath, the way the shadows seemed to cling to him rather than fall naturally. The impossible whiteness of his hair and skin. What are you? Direct. I appreciate that. Alaric turned to face her fully, and his smile revealed teeth that were just slightly too sharp, canines that extended just slightly too far. I am exactly what you're beginning to suspect, and before you run, before you scream, know that I mean you no harm. I have walked this earth for 8 centuries, and in all that time, I have learned to recognize certain qualities in people. You have something rare, Bianca. Something that drew me to you the moment I saw you standing in that crowd, refusing to let that pathetic man diminish you. Bianca's back hit the wall behind her, though she didn't remember moving. Her hands were shaking, but not entirely from fear. Vampires aren't real. And yet here I stand. He didn't approach her, didn't crowd her space, simply remained where he was with an expression of patient understanding. I am Alaric Sangre, king of the northern courts, ruler of the vampire clans that have existed beneath the notice of humanity for millennia. And you, Miss Thorne, have just become part of a very complicated situation. What situation? I don't understand any of this. Your former lover saw us together. He saw me touch you, claim you publicly as mine. In the world I come from, such gestures have weight, have meaning that extends beyond simple theater. Alaric's expression grew serious. Marcus Whitley's fiancée is Elena Cortland, daughter of Marcus Cortland, who happens to be a vampire of considerable standing within the Eastern courts. She recognized me, recognized what I am, and she will tell her father that the Vampire King has taken a human woman as his beloved. But that's not true. You were just helping me. Truth matters less than perception in my world. He finally moved closer, but slowly, giving her time to retreat if she wished. And I am afraid I have placed you in danger. There are those who would use you to strike at me, who would see a human connection as weakness to exploit. I cannot simply walk away now and pretend this encounter never happened. Bianca's mind raced, trying to process impossible information. Vampires, kings, courts hidden beneath the modern world. 20 minutes ago, her biggest problem had been facing Marcus's smugness. Now she was apparently entangled in supernatural politics because a gorgeous, terrifying man had decided to play her fake boyfriend. What are you saying? I am saying that I would like to offer you protection. My protection, specifically. Bring you into my world properly. Ensure that no one dares touch you. And in time, find a way to extricate you safely. His hand reached toward her face, hovering near her cheek without quite touching. I am saying that I acted impulsively, selfishly, because I could not bear to see you hurt, and now I must face the consequences of that impulse. As must you, I'm afraid. You could just tell everyone it was fake, that I don't actually mean anything to you. I could. His hand dropped, but that would mark you as fair game for those who wish to insult me through harming someone I publicly defended. It would also be untrue. We just met. Yes. His dark eyes held hers, and she saw centuries in their depths. Loneliness and power, and something achingly human despite everything he was. And yet I find myself unwilling to let you walk back into that gala alone, unwilling to let you return to whatever small apartment you live in without ensuring your safety, unwilling to imagine a world where I do not see you again. Call it fate, call it madness, call it whatever allows you to believe me when I say that in 800 years I have never felt compelled to protect someone the way I felt compelled to protect you tonight. A laugh bubbled up in Bianca's throat, slightly hysterical. This is insane. Completely, he agreed. I should leave. I should call the police, or a psychiatrist, or you should do whatever makes you feel safe. Alaric stepped back, giving her space. But before you do, look at me and tell me you don't feel it too. This connection, this impossible thing that sparked between us the moment I touched you. She wanted to lie. She wanted to tell him he was delusional and dangerous, and that she felt nothing but fear. But standing in the dim gallery with a vampire king looking at her like she was something precious and breakable, she couldn't force the words past her lips, because he was right. Something had shifted when his hand touched her back, something that went beyond gratitude or simple attraction. "Even if I believe you," she said slowly, "even if I believe any of this is real, I can't just abandon my life. I have a job, an apartment, friends, keep them all. I'm not asking you to disappear." Alaric's expression softened. "I'm asking you to let me ensure you're safe. Let me assign guards you'll never see. Let me give you a phone that reaches me directly if you need it. Let me navigate the political disaster I've created. And perhaps, if you're willing, let me take you to dinner tomorrow night and explain my world properly. Guards I'll never see? How does that work? My people are very good at being invisible when necessary. You'd be amazed what exists in the shadows of your modern cities." He pulled a card from his jacket pocket, matte black with silver lettering that seemed to shimmer. "My private number. Call it any time, day or night. I will answer." Bianca took the card, her fingers brushing his, and the contact sent electricity racing up her arm. She jerked back, startled, and saw something flare in his eyes. Recognition, hunger, tenderness, all mixed together. "What was that?" "Something I have only read about in very old texts," Alaric murmured. "Something I never believed I would experience. Care to be more specific? Tomorrow, dinner. Let me explain everything when I'm not worried about security breaches and political fallout." He reached for her hand, lifting it to his lips in a gesture that should have felt antiquated but instead felt achingly intimate. His lips were cool against her skin, his breath unnecessary but present anyway, ghosting across her knuckles. "Say yes, Bianca Thorne. Say yes to one dinner, one conversation, and then decide if you want to walk away." She should say no. Every self-preservation instinct screamed at her to run, to forget this entire impossible encounter, to go home and convince herself it was all stress-induced hallucination. But looking into Alaric's ancient eyes, feeling the way her heart raced not with fear but with something terrifyingly close to exhilaration, she heard herself whisper, "Yes." His smile transformed his face, made him look almost human in its genuine joy. "Tomorrow evening. I'll collect you at 7. "Where do you live?" She gave him her address, still half convinced she was making the worst decision of her life. He committed it to memory without writing anything down, then offered his arm like a gentleman from a Victorian novel. "Let me escort you back to the gala. I think it's time we made a proper exit together, don't you?" They walked back through the museum's corridors, and Bianca became increasingly aware of the stares that followed them. People stepped aside as they passed, their conversations faltering, their eyes widening. At first she thought it was just Alaric's striking appearance, but then she caught the fear in some gazes, the reverence in others, and realized that more people recognized what he was than she'd imagined possible. The gala hall felt different when they re-entered it. The music still played, the champagne still flowed, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't existed before. Marcus stood near the bar with Elena, whose face had gone pale, her hand gripping her fiancé's arm hard enough that her knuckles showed white. Several other guests had positioned themselves along the walls, watching with barely concealed intensity. "They know," Bianca whispered. "Not all of them, but enough." Alaric's hand settled at her waist again, protective and possessive. "The vampire community is larger than humans realize. We've integrated carefully over centuries, taking positions of power, accumulating wealth and influence. There are at least 20 vampires in this room right now, and they all recognize me." 20? She tried not to look around too, obviously. "How can you tell?" "Scent, stillness, the way they move. You'll learn to spot the signs if you spend time in my world." He guided her toward the coat check, nodding politely to guests who whispered and stared. "For now, let's get you home safely." Outside, the night air was crisp with early autumn chill. A black car pulled up immediately, sleek and expensive, and a driver emerged to open the back door. Alaric helped her inside with old-world courtesy, then slid in beside her. "Take us to Miss Thorne's address," he instructed the driver, "and ensure we're not followed." The driver nodded without speaking, pulling smoothly into traffic. Bianca watched the city lights blur past the tinted windows, her mind still struggling to catch up with the evening's events. "How do I know this is real?" she asked quietly. "How do I know I'm not having some kind of breakdown?" Alaric was silent for a moment, then reached for her hand, placing it against his chest. She felt expensive fabric, hard muscle beneath, but no heartbeat. Nothing, just impossible stillness where life should have been pulsing. "I stopped being alive in the year 1247, he said softly. "I was 28 years old, a minor lord with lands I could barely defend and enemies who wanted them destroyed. A vampire offered me a choice: die with honor or live forever with power. I chose poorly, or perhaps I chose well. 8 centuries is a long time to contemplate such decisions." His chest remained still beneath her palm. No breath, no flutter of pulse. Nothing but cool skin that felt wrong in a way that confirmed every impossible word he'd spoken. She pulled her hand back, pressing it against her own chest, where her heart hammered frantically. "This is real," she breathed. "Unfortunately so. Though I confess I've never regretted my nature quite as much as I do at this moment, seeing fear in your eyes. I'm not afraid." It surprised her to realize it was true. Confused, overwhelmed, teetering on the edge of something that would change everything, but not afraid. Not of him. Should I be? That depends entirely on your perspective. I am dangerous, Bianca. I am a predator by nature, a killer when necessary, the ruler of creatures that would drain you dry without a second thought. But I am also bound by codes older than most countries, by honor and duty and an oath I took when I became king. I will never harm you. I will never allow others to harm you, and I will move heaven and earth to ensure that my impulsive decision tonight doesn't cost you anything you're not willing to give. The car stopped outside a modest building in a neighborhood that definitely didn't see many vehicles of this caliber. Bianca's apartment was on the 4th floor, a cramped one-bedroom with radiators that clanked and neighbors who fought at 2 a.m, but it was hers. Alaric walked her to the building's entrance, his presence somehow making the shabby lobby look shabbier by contrast. At the door he paused, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Lock your door tonight. You'll have guards posted by midnight, though you won't see them. And, Bianca," he reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with surprising gentleness, "whatever happens, whatever complications arise from tonight, know that I don't regret helping you. I couldn't bear to see that man make you feel small, and I would do it again, even knowing the consequences, especially knowing the consequences." His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and she shivered. "I'll see you tomorrow evening. Until then, stay safe." He was gone before she could respond, moving with that unnatural speed, disappearing into the night like he'd never been there at all. Bianca stood in her building's entrance for a long moment, clutching the black business card, before finally trudging up the stairs to her apartment. Inside, she locked the door as instructed, then collapsed on her threadbare couch, staring at the card. The silver lettering caught the light from the street below, Alaric Sangre, and below it, a phone number with an international prefix she didn't recognize. She should throw it away. She should forget everything and pretend tonight never happened. Instead, she found herself tracing the embossed letters, remembering the feel of his hand against her back, the way he'd looked at her like she mattered, like she was something more than a failed artist with a closed gallery, and an ex-boyfriend who'd never appreciated her anyway. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "The guards are in position. You're safe. Sleep well, Bianca Thorne." As she looked at her windows, seeing nothing but darkness and the city lights beyond, yet knowing somehow that he was telling the truth. Invisible protectors stood between her and whatever dangers existed in a world where vampires were real and kings walked among humans. She texted back, "Thank you. See you tomorrow." The response came instantly. "I'm counting the hours already." Bianca fell asleep on her couch, still wearing her 3-year-old dress, clutching her phone like a lifeline, and dreamed of pale kings and impossible choices. The next day passed in a blur of nervous energy. Bianca called in sick to the coffee shop where she worked part-time, unable to imagine making lattes and forcing smiles while her mind raced with everything that had happened. She spent the morning researching vampire lore online, feeling ridiculous and anxious in equal measure. Most of it seemed like fantasy crosses, garlic, stakes through the heart, but some details matched. The paleness, the stillness, the predatory grace. By afternoon, she'd convinced herself she'd hallucinated the entire thing. Some kind of stress-induced episode brought on by facing Marcus. But then she found the business card on her coffee table, solid and real, and her certainty crumbled. At 6:30, she stood in front of her closet, staring at her limited wardrobe with growing panic. Where did one wear to dinner with a vampire king? Her nicest dress was the one from last night. Everything else was casual, worn, bought from thrift stores during leaner months. She settled on dark jeans, a deep green blouse that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes, and her only pair of heeled boots. It would have to be enough. At precisely 7, a knock sounded at her door. Bianca checked the peephole and saw Alaric standing in the hallway, looking impossibly elegant in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She opened the door, suddenly shy. "Hi, hello." His smile was warm, genuine, relieved. "You look beautiful. You look like you walked out of a fashion magazine." "I had 800 years to develop a sense of style. It would be embarrassing if I hadn't mastered it by now." He offered his hand. "Ready?" She took it, feeling that same electric connection, and nodded. They walked down the stairs together, and Bianca caught several neighbors peeking through doorways, eyes wide with curiosity at the striking stranger in their building. The same black car waited outside. Alaric held the door for her, then slid in beside her, maintaining a respectful distance that somehow felt more charged than if he'd sat closer. "Where are we going?" she asked, as the car pulled smoothly into traffic. "Somewhere private. My home, actually. I thought neutral ground might be better for the conversation we need to have, and restaurants are rarely as private as they appear." He must have seen her expression because he added quickly, "You're perfectly safe, Bianca. I have staff who will be present, and I give you my word that I will return you home whenever you wish. But I need to explain things properly, and I'd prefer to do so without worrying about who might be listening. Your home. Right. Is it a castle? Do vampire kings live in castles? Sometimes. This is New York, so it's more of a mansion. Historic, restored, hidden behind enough wards and security to make Fort Knox look accessible." He shifted slightly toward her. "How are you? Did you sleep at all?" "Some. I spent most of today wondering if I'd lost my mind, a reasonable reaction. I spent most of today dealing with political fallout and deflecting questions from vampires who want to know everything about the mysterious human the king has claimed. Claimed. You keep using that word, Dav, because it has specific meaning in my culture. When a vampire publicly declares someone as theirs beloved, protected, bonded, it's a formal announcement. Breaking such a claim is grounds for blood challenge. Disrespecting it is a grave insult." He ran a hand through his white hair, looking almost frustrated. "I didn't think, Bianca. I saw you hurting and I reacted on instinct, and in doing so, I invoked traditions that bind us both." "So what does that mean?" "For me, it means that in the eyes of vampire society, you are under my personal protection. It means that harming you would be the same as attacking me directly. It means that our connection, however it formed, is now recognized and must be respected." He turned to face her fully. "But more than that, more than politics and tradition, it means I want to know you. I want to understand what drew me to you so powerfully. I want to give this impossible thing between us a chance to become something real." The car turned through ornate gates that opened automatically, proceeding up a long driveway lined with ancient trees. The mansion that appeared was stunning 3 stories of Gothic Revival architecture, all stone and stained glass, lit from within with warm golden light that made it look almost welcoming despite its imposing size. "This is where you live?" "For the past century, yes. Before that, I had estates in Europe, but I've found America suits me. All this possibility, all this forward momentum. It's refreshing compared to the old countries where vampires have ruled the same territories for millennia." Staff met them at the entrance. 2 men and a woman who all shared the same pale skin and dark eyes as Alaric, moving with that same liquid grace. Vampires, Bianca realized. His entire household staff were vampires. "Miss Thorne, welcome," the woman said with a slight accent Russian, maybe. "I'm Natasha, head of the household. If you need anything during your visit, please let me know." "Thank you," Bianca managed. Still staring around the entrance hall, with its vaulted ceiling and Renaissance paintings, Alaric guided her through hallways lined with artwork that looked suspiciously original, past libraries and sitting rooms, finally reaching a private dining room that was somehow both opulent and intimate. A table was set for 2, candles flickering, windows looking out over gardens that glowed with carefully placed lights. "I thought we'd eat first," Alaric said, pulling out a chair for her. "I know the whole vampire thing raises questions about food, but I can eat human cuisine. It provides no nutrition, but I can still enjoy the taste and the ritual of sharing a meal." "But you don't need it." "No. I need blood to survive. Animal blood can sustain me, but it's inadequate, like living on stale bread. Human blood provided willingly from donors who are compensated and cared for is what keeps me truly healthy." He sat across from her, candlelight catching in his dark eyes. "I won't lie to you about what I am, Bianca. I kill when necessary to protect my people. I've ended lives that threaten the balance between our world and yours, but I'm not a monster who preys on innocence. I follow codes, laws, structures that have evolved over centuries specifically to prevent that kind of chaos." A vampire server brought wine, and the first course some kind of elegant appetizer that Bianca couldn't identify but tasted incredible. She ate mechanically, her mind spinning with questions. "Tell me about your world," she said finally. "How many vampires are there? How does this all work without humans knowing?" Alaric leaned back, swirling his wine glass more for show than consumption, she suspected. "Estimates suggest there are roughly 50,000 vampires worldwide. We're organized into courts, territories ruled by vampire lords and ladies who answer to regional kings. I control the northern courts of North America, everything from New York to Seattle, basically. There are other kings for other regions. We meet, we negotiate, we maintain the balance, and humans just don't notice? Most don't want to notice. We've positioned ourselves carefully, old money families, corporate executives, politicians, artists, academics. We move in circles where eccentricity is expected. We explain away our appearance with rare medical conditions. We use makeup, contacts, careful lighting. Those who do figure it out are usually dealt with diplomatically, brought into the fold, offered incentives to keep quiet, or in extreme cases, their memories are adjusted. Some older vampires have abilities beyond the physical: mind influence, memory manipulation, emotional projection. I possess some of these skills, though I've never used them on you and I won't. You deserve to make your choices with full clarity. Bianca set down her fork, her appetite vanishing. This is overwhelming. I know, and I'm sorry for that. Alaric reached across the table, his hand open, an invitation rather than a demand. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his, feeling that electric connection again. I want to tell you about something, about what I felt when I touched you last night. There's a concept in vampire lore, rare and mostly theoretical. We call it the soul bond. The idea that even immortal creatures can find their perfect counterpart, someone whose essence calls to theirs across any barrier of soulmates. You think we're soulmates? I think what I felt when I touched you was unlike anything I've experienced in 8 centuries. I think every moment since has been colored by the need to be near you again. I think you felt it too, even if you don't want to admit it. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I'm not asking you to commit to forever, Bianca. I'm asking you to let this unfold. Let me court you properly. Let me show you my world while you decide if there's any place in it you'd want to occupy, and if I decide there isn't. Pain flashed across his face, quickly masked. Then I'll release the formal claim. Make it clear to vampire society that you're off limits but not mine, and ensure your safety through other means. You'll be free to live your life, and I'll return to mine, minus one impossible hope I didn't know I had until I saw you. The sincerity in his voice undid something in her chest. This ancient, powerful creature was offering her a choice, respecting her autonomy even when tradition apparently gave him claims on her. More respect than Marcus had ever shown, more genuine concern than most people she'd known. I don't understand any of this, she said softly, but I can't stop thinking about you either. Ever since last night, it's like there's a pull. Something drawing me toward you that defies logic, the soul bond, he murmured. If the old texts are true, it transcends reason. They finished dinner in a strange bubble of intimacy, talking about less intense topics. He asked about her art, her closed gallery, and listened with genuine interest as she explained her work abstract paintings that tried to capture emotional landscapes. She asked about his human life centuries ago, and he described a world of brutal politics and constant warfare, so different from the modern age that it seemed like fantasy. After dinner, he showed her the mansion's library, 3 stories of books with rolling ladders and stained glass skylights. Then the gallery where he kept his personal art collection pieces that made her gasp, recognizing works that should have been in museums. This is a Caravaggio, she breathed, standing before a painting of dramatic religious imagery. I bought it from his estate after he died. He was a friend of sorts, temperamental, violent, but brilliant. Alaric stood beside her, close enough that she felt the cool emanation from his body. I've collected beauty for centuries, Bianca. Art, music, literature. It's how I stay connected to humanity, how I remember what it felt like to be mortal. Do you miss it? Being human? Some aspects. The simplicity of it, the urgency. When you have eternity, it's easy to waste time, to put off decisions, to watch decades slip past like months. Humans live with such intensity because they must. I envy that sometimes. She turned to face him, finding him much closer than she'd realized. In the gallery's soft lighting, his features were softer, the inhuman aspects less pronounced. He looked almost vulnerable. Can I ask something personal? Anything. Have you ever been in love? In 800 years? Once. Long ago, shortly after I turned. She was human, beautiful, kind. I thought I could protect her, keep her safe while courting her properly. Perhaps turn her if she agreed. His expression grew distant, pained. She was killed by a rival vampire who wanted to prove I was weak. I learned then that love was a luxury I couldn't afford, not as king. I've had companions over the centuries, relationships of convenience or affection, but never love. Never anything that reached into my chest and demanded I feel again. Until now? The question came out as a whisper. Until now. He lifted his hand, cupping her face with cool fingers. You terrify me, Bianca Thorne. You make me want impossible things. You make me feel reckless and young and hopeful in ways I haven't felt since I drew breath. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. I barely know you. Then let me remedy that. Stay tonight. Not for anything improper, he added quickly, but let me show you more of this world. Let me introduce you to members of my court who can answer questions I can't. Let me give you a full picture before you decide. Every rational thought screamed warnings. She should go home, should put distance between herself and this intoxicating creature. But she was tired of being rational, tired of playing it safe. Where had safe gotten her? A failed gallery, a job that barely paid rent, an ex-boyfriend who discarded her the moment she stopped being useful. Okay, she said, show me more. The relief on his face was palpable. He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers, and led her deeper into the mansion. They went downstairs, past the wine cellar, through a door hidden behind a rotating bookshelf that would have been cliché if it weren't so perfectly executed. Beyond the door, stairs descended into the earth, lit with modern fixtures that contrasted sharply with the ancient stone. At the bottom, a space opened up that took Bianca's breath away. It was a throne room, though that term felt inadequate. The space was massive, carved from living rock and reinforced with architectural elements from a dozen different eras. Gothic arches met Art Deco embellishments, Renaissance frescoes bordered modern steel supports. The throne itself sat on a raised dais at the far end, black marble carved with intricate designs, cushioned in deep red velvet, but it was the people that shocked her. At least 30 vampires stood throughout the room, all turning as Alaric entered with her hand in his. They were diverse in appearance, different ethnicities, different eras reflected in their bearing, but all shared that same pale skin, dark eyes, predatory grace. "My court," Alaric said softly. "I asked them to gather so they could meet you properly." A woman stepped forward, tall and elegant, with elaborate braids and skin that suggested African heritage, though her vampire nature had paled it. She wore modern business attire but carried herself like royalty. "I am Zara, second of the Northern Courts, council member and strategist." Her voice was crisp, formal. "Miss Thorne, your appearance in our king's life has created considerable interest." "Interest," Bianca repeated faintly, to put it mildly. Another vampire approached, male, with features that suggested Asian descent, and a suit that screamed old money. "I am Kenji. I've served Lord Alaric for 3 centuries. In that time, I've never seen him publicly claim anyone. You must understand how unprecedented this is." "She understands it's complicated," Alaric cut in, his tone holding authority that made several vampires step back reflexively. "Which is why I've brought her here. Bianca deserves to see the full scope of what she stepped into. She deserves to make an informed choice about whether she wants any part of this life. And if she chooses to walk away..." An older-looking vampire spoke from near the throne, his voice carrying a thick European accent. "What then, my king? You've invoked the claim. You've made her a symbol. Releasing her now shows weakness. Then I'll show weakness," Alaric said coldly. "I won't trap her in a life she doesn't want. I've existed for centuries prioritizing duty over desire. Perhaps it's time I tried something different." The court erupted in murmurs, vampires exchanging glances and whispered comments in languages Bianca didn't understand. Alaric's hand tightened around hers, protective and grounding. Silence. His voice didn't rise, but power rippled through it, something ancient and commanding that made every vampire in the room freeze. "Bianca is under my personal protection. You will treat her with respect. You will answer her questions honestly. And you will remember that I am still king, and my decisions are not subject to committee approval." The authority in his words sent shivers down Bianca's spine. This was the vampire king in full force, not the gentle suitor who'd courted her over dinner. This was what 8 centuries of power looked like when unleashed. Zara bowed her head. "Of course, my lord. Forgive our concern. We simply want to understand." As does she. Alaric gestured to a seating area near the throne where plush chairs formed a semicircle. "Please, ask her whatever you wish. Let her see who we are." What followed was the strangest hour of Bianca's life. The vampires questioned her politely but intensely about everything. Her background, her family, her art, her intentions toward their king. She answered honestly, feeling like she was being interviewed for a position she didn't fully understand. They explained their society in detail, the blood laws that prevented random killing, the courts that settled disputes, the careful balance between vampire affairs and human ignorance. "We're not monsters," Kenji explained at one point. "Most of us haven't killed a human in decades, perhaps centuries. We have systems. Donors who volunteer for compensation, blood banks for emergencies. The wild vampires you read about in books, the creatures that hunt and destroy, we police those ourselves. They threaten our secrecy and our survival. But you do kill," Bianca said. Alaric said as much, when necessary. "When someone threatens the balance or hurts our people, yes." Zara leaned forward, her expression serious. But understand, Miss Thorne, we execute our own far more often than humans. A vampire who breaks our laws, who feeds recklessly or exposes our kind, faces absolute punishment. We survived this long by being more civilized than the mortals who fear us. Eventually, the questions wound down. Alaric dismissed the court with gestures and quiet words, until only a few remained: Zara, Kenji, and an ancient-looking vampire named Dimitri, who'd been introduced as the court historian. I have a question, Bianca said as the others filtered out. This soul bond that Alaric mentioned. Is it real? Dimitri's weathered face cracked into something resembling a smile. I am 4,000 years old, young one. I have seen 3 confirmed soul bonds in all that time. They are rare as miracles and just as powerful. If Lord Alaric believes he's found his bonded, then I trust his judgment. But what does it mean, practically? It means you are connected in ways that transcend normal vampire-human relationships. It means that if you choose to accept the bond, you would become more than simply his beloved. You would be his partner in all ways, granted immortality if you wish it, power and position within our society. Dimitri exchanged glances with Alaric. It also means vulnerability. What hurts you hurts him. What threatens you threatens his ability to rule effectively. It's why soul bonds are so dangerous for vampire royalty. And if I don't accept it, then the bond remains incomplete, a potential forever unfulfilled. Lord Alaric would eventually recover, though it might take decades or centuries. You would live your human life, always feeling that something was missing, that tug toward a connection you refused. Zahara's expression was sympathetic. Neither option is easy, Miss Thorne. Bianca looked at Alaric, who'd remained silent during this exchange, his face carefully neutral. What do you want? I want you to choose freely, he said quietly. I want you to have time to process everything, to decide what you actually feel versus what the bond might be influencing. I want to court you properly, if you'll let me, without the pressure of ancient magic or political necessity. I want whatever we become to be real. The vulnerability in his voice undid her. This powerful ancient king was offering her the choice he'd never had when he was turned, offering patience and time instead of demands. I'm not ready to decide anything permanent, she said slowly, but I'm willing to try, to see where this goes, to learn more about your world, to figure out what I actually want instead of what everyone expects. Relief washed over his features. That's all I could hope for. Kenji cleared his throat. Then with your permission, my lord, I suggest we discuss security arrangements. The Eastern courts have been making inquiries. Marcus Cortland wants to meet the human who caught the king's eye. Absolutely not. Alaric's voice turned sharp. Marcus Cortland can submit a formal request through proper channels, which I will formally deny. He's Elena's father, Zara pointed out, and Elena witnessed your claim. Protocol suggests I put Bianca in a room with vampires who might see her as a weakness to exploit? No. Alaric stood pacing. Marcus Cortland is a traditional hardliner. He believes humans are food sources at best, tolerated pets at worst. I won't expose her to that. What about Elena? Bianca asked. My ex's fiancée. What does she think about all this? Elena is conflicted, Kenji said carefully. She's been raised in the Eastern courts, taught that humans are beneath vampires. But she's also young by our standards, only turned 50 years ago. She may have more flexibility in her thinking, or she may see this as an opportunity to embarrass her future father-in-law by aligning with me, Alaric said darkly. The court politics are Byzantine. Bianca, every action has 6 layers of meaning. This is exhausting, she said, rubbing her temples. Yes, he returned to her side, crouching so they were eye level, which is why I'm going to take you home now, let you rest, and give you space to process. But tomorrow, if you're willing, I'd like to show you something beautiful. Something that has nothing to do with politics or protocols or anything except showing you why immortality can be a gift. What is it? A surprise. Trust me? She looked into his ancient eyes and found herself nodding. Okay, yes. The drive back to her apartment was quiet, both of them lost in thought. When they arrived, Alaric walked her to the door again, his presence comforting despite everything she'd learned. Thank you for tonight, she said, for being honest, for giving me choices. Thank you for giving me a chance. For not running screaming into the night. He smiled, and it transformed his face into something young and hopeful. I'll collect you at noon tomorrow. Wear something comfortable. He kissed her hand again, that courtly gesture that made her heart flutter, then disappeared into the darkness. Bianca trudged up to her apartment, her mind whirling with vampires and soul bonds and impossible choices. She fell asleep wondering what tomorrow would bring, and dreamed of pale kings and forever. The next day dawned bright and clear, autumn sunlight streaming through Bianca's windows. She woke with a start, momentarily convinced she'd dreamed everything, but her phone showed texts from Alaric, good morning wishes, and reminders about their noon meeting. She showered and dressed in jeans and a sweater, as instructed, then waited with mounting nerves. At precisely noon, a knock sounded. She opened the door to find Alaric looking impossibly handsome in casual clothes, dark jeans, a gray sweater, leather jacket. Sunglasses hid his eyes. "The sun," she said immediately. "I thought that we burst into flames?" "No, sunlight weakens us, makes us vulnerable and uncomfortable, but it doesn't kill. Not immediately, at least. Prolonged exposure would be dangerous, but I can manage a few hours with proper precautions." He gestured to a backpack over his shoulder. "I brought supplies." "Ready for an adventure?" She grabbed her coat and followed him downstairs to where a motorcycle waited instead of the usual car. Bianca stopped short. "You're kidding. You said you wanted to see beautiful things. The best views require leaving the city properly." He handed her a helmet. "Trust me?" She strapped on the helmet, let him help her onto the bike behind him, and wrapped her arms around his waist. Even through layers of clothing, she felt that electric connection, that sense of rightness that defied explanation. They rode out of the city, heading north into countryside that still held patches of autumn color. The ride took about 2 hours, Bianca clinging to Alaric as he navigated winding roads with confident ease. Finally, they turned onto a private drive that led deep into forest, emerging at a small stone cottage that looked like something from a fairy tale. "This is one of my private retreats," Alaric explained, helping her off the bike. "No court, no politics, no expectations, just peace." The cottage interior was cozy fireplace, comfortable furniture, windows that looked out over a pristine lake. Alaric immediately set about building a fire, moving with practiced efficiency. "How many properties do you own?" Bianca asked, exploring. "Honestly, I've lost count. When you live long enough, you accumulate things. But this place is special. I built it myself about 100 years ago, when I needed to remember what solitude felt like." He finished with the fire, then retrieved his backpack, pulling out a thick blanket and a basket that smelled incredible. "Picnic by the lake?" "The view is spectacular." They walked down to the water's edge where a small dock extended over the pristine surface. Alaric spread the blanket, set out containers of food that his staff had clearly prepared, and sat with an ease that seemed at odds with his regal bearing. "Tell me about your art," he said as they ate. "What drew you to painting?" Bianca found herself opening up, describing how color and texture had always spoken to her more clearly than words, how she'd fought her practical parents to attend art school, how devastated she'd been when her gallery closed after only 2 years. "It felt like failing," she admitted. "Like I'd proven everyone right who said art wasn't a real career. Failure is a mortal concept," Alaric said thoughtfully. "When you have eternity, everything becomes about patience and iteration. You try, you fail, you try again. Eventually, if you persist, you succeed. Your gallery closing doesn't mean your art failed. It means that particular business model at that particular time didn't work. There will be other opportunities. Easy to say when you have centuries to wait for them. True. But also true that giving up after one setback wastes the time you do have." He shifted closer, his shoulder brushing hers. "I've seen countless artists across the centuries, Bianca. The ones who created lasting beauty weren't always the most talented. They were the most persistent, the most willing to continue despite rejection. I think you have that persistence in you." "What makes you think that? You showed up to that gala despite knowing your ex would be there. You agreed to dinner with a vampire who could have been lying about everything. You're sitting here now, having a picnic with a creature that shouldn't exist, trying to understand an impossible situation. That takes courage and persistence." She leaned against him, feeling the coolness of his body, the solid strength. "Tell me something true. Something you've never told anyone else." Alaric was quiet for a long moment, staring out over the lake. "I'm tired," he finally said. 8 centuries is a long time to carry responsibility. Sometimes I fantasize about walking away, letting someone else be king, finding a quiet corner of the world and simply existing. But I can't. Too many people depend on me. Too many structures would collapse without my authority. So I continue and I tell myself it's enough. Until last night, when I touched you and felt something I'd never felt before. Purpose that wasn't about duty. Connection that wasn't about politics. For the first time in longer than I can remember, I wanted something purely for myself." Bianca turned to look at him, and he removed his sunglasses, revealing eyes that held centuries of loneliness. Without thinking, she reached up and cupped his face, feeling the cool skin, the sharp line of his jaw. "I don't know what this is between us," she whispered. "But I feel it too. This pull, this sense that everything led to meeting you. The soul bond," he murmured. "Destiny or chemistry or cosmic coincidence. I don't care what we call it. I only know that I cannot imagine letting you go. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, but she didn't want to. When his lips met hers, she felt electricity arc through her entire body. His mouth was cool, gentle, reverent, as though he were kissing something precious and breakable. She pressed closer, her hands moving to his hair, and felt him shudder. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, well, she was breathing hard, he was pretending to Alaric rested his forehead against hers. That was... Yeah, she agreed. They stayed by the lake until the sun began to set, talking about everything and nothing. He told her stories from centuries past meeting Shakespeare, surviving the Black Death, watching empires rise and fall. She told him about her childhood, her parents who'd never understood her artistic temperament, her dreams of success that had crumbled under the weight of reality. I want to help you restart your gallery, Alaric said as twilight painted the sky purple and gold. Not as charity, but as investment. I've patronized artists for centuries. Let me back you properly this time, with resources and connections that can make the difference. I can't accept that. It would feel like what? Accepting help from someone who cares about you? Bianca, I have more wealth than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Let me use it to support something beautiful. Let me be part of your success instead of watching from the sidelines. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight. Can I think about it? Of course. I'm not trying to buy your affection, I promise. I just want to see you happy, creating the art that clearly feeds your soul. They rode back to the city as stars emerged, Bianca clinging to Alaric and wondering how her life had transformed so completely in less than 2 days. At her apartment, he walked her upstairs again, seeming reluctant to leave. I have court business tomorrow, he said at her door. Tedious political meetings that I can't avoid. But the next evening, there's a vampire gathering, a social event where the northern courts come together. I would very much like you to accompany me. Let people see us together officially. Make it clear that you're important to me. A vampire party. That sounds terrifying. It will be incredibly boring, actually. Lots of posturing and ancient creatures trying to prove they're still relevant, but having you there would make it bearable. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. And it would send a message to anyone considering challenging our connection. Are people challenging it? Some, the Eastern courts especially. Marcus Cortland has been making noise about proper protocol, about how vampire kings shouldn't entangle themselves with humans. His expression darkened. He's using your ex-boyfriend's connection to Elena to justify his interest, but really, he's always resented my authority. He sees this as an opportunity to prove I'm unfit to rule, because you care about a human, because I'm letting emotion influence political decisions. To traditionalists like Marcus, that's weakness. Alaric sighed. Which is exactly why I need you at this gathering. Show them that you're not weakness. Show them that you're strength I choose to embrace. Bianca considered. The idea terrified her, walking into a room full of vampires who might see her as food or a liability. But the alternative, letting Alaric face political pressure alone, letting traditionalists dictate their relationship, felt worse. Okay, I'll go. But you have to promise not to leave me alone with anyone. I promise. I'll stay by your side the entire night. He kissed her forehead gently. Thank you. For trusting me. For giving this a chance. For being brave. After he left, Bianca collapsed on her couch. Overwhelmed. She was dating a vampire king. She was going to a vampire party. She was potentially soul-bonded to an immortal creature who looked at her like she was something precious. Her phone rang her best friend Jenna, who she'd been avoiding since the gala. Where have you been? Jenna demanded. You left the reunion with some gorgeous, mysterious man and then disappeared. Spill everything. Bianca spent the next hour carefully editing the truth. Yes, she'd met someone. Yes, he was incredible. No, she couldn't explain everything right now. Jenna was ecstatic, demanding details about the mysterious Alaric and insisting on meeting him soon. I knew Marcus was an idiot for letting you go, Jenna declared. And now some rich, gorgeous man has swept in to prove it. This is justice. If only she knew the whole truth, Bianca thought, ending the call with promises to provide updates. She spent the rest of the night researching vampire lore more seriously, trying to understand the world she was entering. The next day dragged. Bianca tried to focus on sketching, but her mind kept wandering to Alaric, to the way he'd kissed her by the lake, to the impossible future they might share. Her phone buzzed periodically with texts from him, updates on his boring meetings, complaints about vampire bureaucracy, sweet messages that made her smile. Evening came, and with it, a delivery. A large box arrived at her door with Alaric's card attached. Inside, she found a dress that stole her breath, deep sapphire blue silk that shimmered when it moved, elegant and sophisticated without being ostentatious. With it came shoes, jewelry, and a note in elegant handwriting. For tomorrow night. Though you would be beautiful in anything, I thought you might appreciate armor for battle. The color will bring out your eyes. She tried it on and stared at her reflection. The dress transformed her, made her look like she belonged in Alaric's world of luxury and power. She looked like someone who could stand beside a vampire king. The next evening, Alaric arrived in formal attire that made her mouth go dry. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, his white hair pulled back partially, his presence commanding enough to make her neighbors whisper as they passed. "You're stunning," he said when she opened the door. "That color is perfection on you. You clean up pretty well yourself." They drove to a building in Manhattan's financial district, an Art Deco skyscraper that looked ordinary from outside. But Alaric led her through a private entrance to an elevator that descended instead of ascending, going deep underground. "The gathering is held in the old speakeasy tunnels," he explained. "Restored, expanded, turned into neutral territory where all courts can meet safely." The doors opened onto a space that defied expectations. It was massive, clearly carved out and expanded over decades, decorated in a style that blended era's Victorian elegance met modern luxury. Vampires filled the space, hundreds of them, all pale and beautiful and terrifying. They moved like predators even in formal wear, and the weight of their collective attention when Alaric entered with Bianca on his arm was suffocating. "Stay close," he murmured, his hand protective at her waist. "And remember, you belong here. You're with me, and that means you're untouchable." They moved through the crowd, and vampires parted for them, bowing slightly to Alaric, their eyes tracking Bianca with undisguised curiosity. She recognized Zara and Kenji among the faces, both nodding to her with what looked like approval. "Lord Alaric." A smooth voice cut through the murmurs, and a vampire approached who radiated authority. He was tall, dark-skinned, with tribal scarring on his face that suggested African origins. "You honor us with your presence, and this must be the famous human, Marcus Cortland." Alaric's voice cooled. "May I introduce Bianca Thorne? Bianca, this is Marcus, Lord of the Eastern Courts." The vampire who was Elena's father studied her with eyes that held nothing but disdain. "Charming. Tell me, Miss Thorne, do you have any idea what you've stepped into? The complications your presence creates." "Marcus," Alaric warned. "It's a legitimate question. This girl has no training, no understanding of our ways, yet you've claimed her as bonded. You've elevated a nobody to a position of significance that affects all our courts." Marcus circled them slowly, predatory. "Some might see that as impulsive, reckless even. Some might remember that I'm king, and my personal affairs are not subject to their approval," Alaric countered, his voice carrying that resonant power she'd heard before. "Even when those affairs risk exposing us all? Even when they create vulnerabilities that our enemies could exploit?" Marcus stopped directly in front of Bianca. "Tell me, child, if someone threatened to torture you, to kill you slowly, do you think your vampire king would sacrifice his duty to save you?" "That's enough." Alaric moved between them, and the temperature seemed to drop. "Threaten her again, Marcus, and we'll have a very different conversation. One that involves blood law and satisfaction. I'm not threatening. I'm illustrating the problem." But Marcus stepped back, hands raised. "You've made her a weapon against yourself, Alaric. I hope you understand that." Before Alaric could respond, another vampire approached Elena, Marcus's daughter. She looked nervous, her pale hands clasped together, her eyes darting between her father and the king. "Lord Alaric, Miss Thorne, may I speak with you privately?" Marcus's eyes narrowed, but he didn't object as Elena led them to a quieter corner of the gathering. She looked at Bianca with a mix of curiosity and something like sympathy. "I'm sorry about my father. He's traditional." Elena twisted her hands. "But I wanted to warn you. Marcus is planning something. He's been meeting with other traditional lords, building a coalition. They want to challenge Alaric's authority, and they plan to use you to do it." "How?" Bianca asked. "By proving that your connection is fake, that it's just Alaric being impulsive. Or worse, by proving it's real and then demonstrating how that compromises his ability to rule. There's going to be a challenge tonight. Marcus will demand proof of the soul bond, and if Alaric can't provide it..." Elena trailed off, looking miserable. "What happens if he can't prove it?" Alaric asked quietly. "They'll demand he release you or face a vote of no confidence. And if he releases you without the soul bond proven, you become fair game. Any vampire could claim you, challenge for you, even kill you to prove a point about human weakness." Elena met Bianca's eyes. "I'm sorry, I don't agree with this, but my father is powerful, and he's convinced others." Alaric's hand tightened on Bianca's waist. "How do we prove a soul bond? Blood bond ritual. It's ancient. Requires both parties to consent, and if the soul bond is real, it will manifest visibly. if it's not?" Elena shrugged helplessly. "Then you're both humiliated, and Marcus wins. And if we don't do the ritual, then you look like you're hiding something, and Marcus still wins." Elena glanced over her shoulder where her father was watching them. "I shouldn't have warned you. If he finds out, I'll be punished. But I don't think it's right, using humans as pawns in our politics. You deserve to know what's coming." She hurried away before they could thank her, disappearing into the crowd. Alaric pulled Bianca closer, his expression grim. "I'm sorry. This is exactly what I hope to avoid. What is a blood bond ritual? It's a ceremony where we each consume a small amount of the other's blood while speaking vows. If a soul bond exists, it creates a visible connection light, energy, something undeniable. If it doesn't exist, nothing happens, and we look foolish." He cupped her face gently. "I won't force this on you, Bianca. If you're not ready, we'll find another way." She thought about Marcus's contempt, about being used as a weapon against Alaric, about vampires who saw humans as nothing but food. Then she thought about the way Alaric had protected her, respected her, given her choices even when it complicated his life. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked. "What if we're wrong about the soul bond? Then I'll deal with the political fallout and keep you safe anyway." "But Bianca," his dark eyes bored into hers, "I'm not wrong. I feel it every time I'm near you, this connection that goes beyond anything I've experienced. The question is whether you feel it too, whether you're willing to take this leap." She remembered the electric shock when he'd first touched her, the way kissing him had felt like coming home, the pull she'd felt toward him from the very beginning. It defied logic, but logic had never gotten her anywhere she wanted to be. "Okay," she said, "let's do it. Let's prove them wrong." Relief and terror mixed on his face. "Are you certain?" "No, but I'm willing to try." He kissed her then, right there in front of hundreds of vampires, a claiming kiss that left no doubt about his feelings. When they parted, whispers had erupted throughout the gathering. "Then let's give them a show," Alaric murmured. He led her to the center of the space, where a clear area existed for formal challenges and ceremonies. Vampires gathered around, forming a circle, their faces showing everything from curiosity to hostile skepticism. Marcus stood at the front, looking triumphant. "Lord Alaric," he called out, "do you accept the challenge of proof?" "I do." Alaric's voice rang with authority. "I claim soul bond with Bianca Thorne, and I will prove it through blood ritual before this gathering." A vampire Bianca didn't recognize brought forward a ceremonial knife, ornate and ancient-looking. Zara appeared beside them, her expression worried but supportive. "I'll officiate," she said quietly. "Just follow my lead." The gathering fell silent as Zara began speaking in a language Bianca didn't understand, something old and rhythmic, formal. Then she switched to English. "The blood bond ritual requires consent, honesty, and courage. Both parties must give freely of themselves, acknowledge the connection they claim, and accept the consequences of truth. Lord Alaric, do you consent?" "I do." "Bianca Thorne, do you consent?" Bianca's mouth went dry, but she forced the words out. "I do." Zara took the knife, made a small cut on Alaric's palm. Blood welled up, dark red and somehow more vibrant than it should be. Then she turned to Bianca. "This won't hurt much," she whispered, and made an identical cut on Bianca's palm. The pain was sharp but brief. Alaric took her bleeding hand in his, their blood mixing, and the moment their wounds touched, Bianca felt something surge through her power, connection, something fundamental and overwhelming. "Speak your truth," Zara instructed. Alaric's eyes never left Bianca's. "I claim you as my soul bond, my beloved, my equal in all things. I offer you my protection, my loyalty, my heart that has not beaten for centuries but stirs at your presence. I see you, Bianca Thorne, and I choose you." Tears pricked Bianca's eyes. I claim you as my soul bond. I don't fully understand what that means, but I feel it. This connection, this impossible thing between us. I choose you too, Alaric Sangre. I choose this leap into the unknown." The gathering held its breath. For a moment nothing happened, and Bianca felt panic rising. Then light erupted from their joined hands, not harsh but beautiful, soft gold that spiraled up their arms, wrapping around them like living ribbons. It grew brighter, more intense, filling the entire space with radiance that made vampires gasp and step back. Bianca felt the soul bond snap into place, not just emotionally but physically, like something clicking home in her chest. She could feel Alaric's presence now, not just physically but internally, could sense his emotions, relief, joy, love so intense it took her breath away. The light faded gradually, leaving them standing hand in hand, blood still mingling, but changed somehow, bound in ways that went beyond any ceremony. The gathering erupted in noise, some vampires cheering, others arguing, Marcus looking apoplectic with rage. But Alaric only had eyes for Bianca. "You're mine," he whispered. "Truly mine, and I'm yours. Forever if you'll have me." "Forever," she echoed. the word feeling less terrifying than it should have. Marcus pushed forward, his face twisted with anger. This proves nothing. A light show, easily faked enough. The voice came from an ancient vampire who'd been silent until now, standing near the back. He was small, wizened, but power radiated from him that made even Marcus hesitate. I am Dimitri, historian of 4,000 years. I have witnessed 2 true soul bonds in all my existence. I watched both manifest exactly as this one did. The light cannot be faked, Marcus. It is the visible sign of 2 souls recognizing their complement. Lord Alaric's claim is legitimate. Silence fell again as the implication sank in. Zara wrapped their hands in silk, binding the wounds together. The blood bond is complete, she announced formally. Bianca Thorne is recognized as soul bonded to King Alaric Sangre. To harm her is to harm him. To insult her is to insult the northern courts. This is witnessed and recorded. Vampires began to bow, some enthusiastically, others reluctantly, but all acknowledging the new reality. Even Marcus, though his face promised this wasn't over. Alaric pulled Bianca close, mindful of their bound hands, and kissed her temple. Are you all right? I can feel you, she said wonderingly. In my head, in my chest. Your emotions, your presence. Is it always like this? The bond will settle, become less overwhelming, but yes, we'll always feel each other now, connected across any distance. He smiled, and she felt his happiness through their new connection. Is it too much? It's perfect, she realized. Terrifying and perfect. They spent the rest of the evening accepting congratulations and navigating vampire politics. Bianca met dozens of vampires from different courts, all curious about the human who'd bonded with their king. Some were genuinely kind, others barely concealed their contempt, but all treated her with new respect. Marcus kept his distance, but his glares promised retribution. Elena approached once briefly and squeezed Bianca's hand. I'm glad it worked out, she whispered, and I'm sorry about Marcus, about all of this. You deserve better than to be caught in our politics. Thank you for the warning earlier, Bianca said sincerely. Elena smiled sadly and disappeared back into the crowd. Bianca wondered what it cost the young vampire to go against her father, but there was no time to dwell on it. Finally, after hours of social performance, Alaric extracted them from the gathering. They emerged into the cool night air, both exhausted, their hands still bound together with silk. Can we take this off now? Bianca asked. Tradition says to leave it for 24 hours, but Alaric carefully unwrapped the silk, revealing their palms. The cuts had healed completely, leaving no trace except for a faint silver mark that looked like intertwined vines. We match now. Soulbond marks. Bianca traced the mark on her palm, feeling wonder. This is permanent as we choose to make it. The bond can be severed theoretically, but it would be agonizing for both parties. Most bonded pairs never want to separate. He brought her marked palm to his lips, kissing it gently. Take me home, Bianca. Not to your apartment, not to my mansion, but somewhere we can just be together without politics or pressure. The cottage by the lake? Perfect. They rode through the night, leaving the city behind, and reached the cottage as dawn began to paint the skies pink and gold. Alaric had to take precautions against the sunlight, but inside, with curtains drawn and fire burning, they were safe. They collapsed on the couch together, exhausted but happy. Bianca curled against Alaric's side despite his coolness. Through their bond, she could feel his contentment, his wonder, his deep and abiding love. What happens now? She asked. With us, with everything. Now we figure it out together. You'll need to learn about vampire society, about my world. I'll need to learn about yours, find ways to support your art and your dreams. We'll face whatever political challenges come, together. He stroked her hair gently. And eventually, when you're ready, we'll discuss the question of immortality. Would I have to become a vampire? If you wanted to live as long as I will, yes. The process is difficult and irreversible, so it's not a decision to make lightly, but we have time. The soul bond will extend your natural lifespan somewhat, give us decades to decide rather than years. He tilted her face up to look at him. I want forever with you, Bianca. But I want you to choose it freely, understanding fully what it means. What if I don't want to become a vampire? What if I want to stay human, live my natural life? Pain flickered through their bond, but his voice remained steady. Then I'll treasure every moment we have. I'll love you for your human lifespan, and when you're gone, I'll carry you with me through eternity. I won't pressure you, won't make you choose between who you are and being with me. The sincerity in his words, in the emotions flowing through their bond, made tears prick her eyes. I don't know what I want yet. This is all so new, I know. And that's fine. He kissed her forehead. We have time to figure it out. For now, let's just exist. No politics, no pressure, just us in this moment. They fell asleep together on the couch as dawn became full morning, Bianca finally feeling safe enough to rest completely, Alaric holding her like she was precious treasure. Days became weeks, and weeks became months. Bianca learned to navigate vampire society, attending court functions with Alaric, building relationships with vampires like Zara and Kenji, who became genuine friends. She met vampire artists and historians, learned the complex history of the courts, and slowly began to understand the world she'd entered. Alaric, in turn, supported her return to art. He funded a new gallery, but let her manage it completely, trusting her vision. He introduced her to vampire collectors who appreciated her work, helped her build connections in the art world that existed outside vampire circles. Her paintings began to sell, critics praised her emotional landscapes, and she felt success in ways she'd never experienced. Marcus continued to be a problem. He made formal complaints about Alaric's judgment, tried to build coalitions against him, but the soul bond's legitimacy undercut his arguments. Most vampires respected the ancient connection, even if they questioned Alaric's choice of a human partner. Alina became an unexpected ally. She began spending time with Bianca, teaching her about Eastern court culture, apologizing repeatedly for her father's hostility. A tentative friendship formed, built on their shared experience of navigating vampire politics as relative outsiders. "I envy you," Elena admitted one evening when they were having coffee in Bianca's new apartment, a place Alaric had insisted on providing, larger and safer than her old studio. "You get to choose this world. I was turned without real consent, dragged into it by my father who wanted a vampire heir. You have freedom I've never experienced. You could leave," Bianca pointed out. "Make your own path, could I?" Elena looked haunted. "Where would I go? What would I do? I'm bound to the Eastern courts by blood and obligation. Unless..." She trailed off, looking uncertain. "Unless what?" "Unless I requested transfer to the Northern courts. It's rare but possible. If Lord Alaric accepted me, I could serve him instead of my father." Elena met Bianca's eyes. "But that would mean asking you both to risk Marcus's wrath." "And I have no right to talk to Alaric," Bianca interrupted. "I can't speak for him on court matters, but I think he'd consider it. And for what it's worth, I'd support it." Elena's face lit with hope. The conversation happened, and within a month, Elena had officially transferred to the Northern courts, taking a position in Zara's diplomatic corps. Marcus was livid, but couldn't formally object without admitting he'd driven his own daughter away. 6 months after the blood bond ritual, Bianca stood in her new gallery, surrounded by her paintings, watching elegantly dressed humans and vampires mingle during her opening night. Alaric stood beside her, his hand at her back, his pride flowing through their bond. "You did this," he murmured. "All your talent, your vision, your persistence. I'm so proud of you. You helped. The connections, the funding, were just resources. You created the art. You built this." He kissed her temple. "You're magnificent, beloved." Marcus chose that moment to appear, somehow having obtained an invitation despite their mutual hostility. He moved through the gallery with 2 other vampires, all traditional Eastern court lords, examining Bianca's paintings with expressions that suggested they were evaluating livestock. "Alaric." Marcus stopped before them, his tone falsely pleasant. "Congratulations on your pet's little hobby shop." "How quaint." Bianca felt Alaric's anger spike through their bond, but she squeezed his hand, keeping her own voice level. "Marcus, I didn't realize Eastern court lords were interested in contemporary art." "We're not. We're interested in understanding why our king has lost perspective so completely." Marcus gestured at the paintings. "You've invested enormous resources in this human's vanity project, while actual vampire concerns go unaddressed. The southern courts are expanding their territory, the Asian clans are forming new alliances, and you're playing patron to amateur artwork. That's enough," Alaric said coldly. "Is it? Because I think we're past enough. I think we're at the point where other lords are questioning whether you're fit to rule." Marcus's eyes gleamed. "There will be a formal challenge at the next Grand Council. A vote of confidence in your leadership, and I suspect you'll find less support than you expect." "Let them challenge," Alaric said. "I've ruled these courts for 2 centuries. I've maintained peace, prosperity, and security. If some traditionalists think one soul bond undermines that, let them make their case." "Oh, we will." Marcus's smile was cruel. "And when you lose, when you're stripped of your crown, I wonder if this human will still find you interesting. Or will she abandon you the way mortals always abandon things once they lose their shine?" Bianca stepped forward before Alaric could respond. "You know what I think, Marcus? I think you're terrified, not of Alaric losing power, but of what it means that he chose love over duty. Because that's something you've never done, never could do. You're so busy playing politics that you forgot what it means to actually care about someone. Your own daughter fled to another court to escape you. That's your legacy driving away everyone who might have loved you. Marcus's face darkened with rage. Careful, human. You're protected by the soul bond, but there are limits. Touch her, and I'll end you. Alaric's voice carried that resonant power, and several vampires in the gallery turned to stare. Threaten her again, and I'll invoke blood right. Challenge me formally, Marcus, but leave her out of your games. Everything is a game, Marcus hissed, and you've already lost by caring more about this girl than your crown. He left with his companions, and the gallery fell silent until Zara stepped forward, raising her glass. To art that speaks truth, she said clearly, and to artists brave enough to create it. Other guests joined the toast, breaking the tension. The evening continued successfuls despite Marcus's intrusion, but Bianca felt worry gnawing at her. Later, back at the cottage where they'd spent increasingly frequent time, she confronted Alaric. He's right, isn't he? I'm making you vulnerable. He's a bitter fool who can't understand that some things are worth risk. Alaric pulled her close, his cool arms steadying. Yes, loving you complicates my political position. Yes, some vampires see it as weakness. But I've spent 8 centuries making decisions based purely on duty and strategy. You're the first thing I've chosen with my heart, and I won't apologize for that. What if you lose the crown? What if they vote you out? Then we'll deal with it. I'll still be powerful, still have allies and resources. We'll find somewhere safe and build a life away from politics. He cupped her face gently. Bianca, I'm not afraid of losing power. I'm afraid of losing you. Everything else is negotiable. I love you, she said, the words still feeling new and precious. I'm terrified of what's coming, but I love you. I love you too. With everything I am, everything I've been, everything I hope to be. He kissed her, and through their bond, she felt the depth of his emotion, love that spanned centuries of loneliness. Hope that maybe this time happiness wouldn't be destroyed. The Grand Council was held 2 months later, in a neutral location, an old castle in upstate New York that had been vampire territory for centuries. Alaric had tried to convince Bianca to stay safe elsewhere, but she refused. This challenge was about her, about their bond. She would face it beside him. The council chamber was massive, gothic, filled with vampires from every court in North America. Hundreds of ancient beings, all gathered to judge whether their king was fit to continue ruling. Marcus presented his case with calculated precision. He listed instances where Alaric's judgment had been questionable, not because he was wrong, but because his decisions prioritized peace over dominance, cooperation over conquest. He painted the northern courts as weak under Alaric's rule, vulnerable to external threats because their king was too busy playing house with a human. He claims soul bond gives him strength, Marcus concluded. But we all see the truth. He's distracted, compromised, more concerned with protecting one mortal than securing our future. The North needs a leader who puts vampires first, not a lovesick fool who will sacrifice everything for human sentiment. The chamber erupted in debate. Some vampires defended Alaric passionately. Zara gave a speech about his centuries of successful leadership. Kenji presented evidence of the court's prosperity. Others sided with Marcus, arguing that vampire kings needed to be beyond human weakness. Finally, Alaric stood to speak. Silence fell instantly, all eyes on the pale king who'd ruled so long. Marcus calls me compromised. Perhaps he's right. I am compromised by hope, by the belief that our species deserves more than endless political maneuvering and fear. I'm compromised by love, by the knowledge that even immortals need connection to give existence meaning. He turned to look at Bianca where she sat in the visitors section. 6 months ago, I was going through motions, ruling because I always had, leading because someone must, but feeling nothing but duty. Then I met Bianca Thorne, and everything changed. He moved through the chamber, his presence commanding. The soul bond is real. Those of you who witness the ritual know it cannot be faked. I am connected to this woman in ways that transcend your politics, that give me strength you cannot understand. And yes, that makes me vulnerable. Love always does. But it also makes me fight harder, think more clearly, care more deeply about building a world worth living in. Pretty words, Marcus interrupted. But sentiment doesn't protect borders or maintain order. No. Power does, strategy does, and I have both in abundance, regardless of my personal life. Alaric's voice turned cold. You want to paint me as weak, Marcus? Then challenge me directly. Blood combat here and now. Prove I'm unfit by defeating me in single challenge. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Blood combat was ancient, brutal, often fatal. Marcus's expression shifted from confident to uncertain. That's not necessary. You've questioned my strength. Prove your claim. Alaric spread his hands. Or admit this was never about my fitness to rule. Admit you simply cannot accept that I found something you never could. The challenge hung in the air. Marcus looked around, clearly calculating. He was old, powerful, but Alaric was a king with 8 centuries of experience. Blood combat would be risky at best, suicidal at worst. I don't need to prove anything, Marcus said finally. Let the council vote, Cord. Someone called from the back. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Mocking, the vote was called. Each vampire lord and lady cast their judgment confidence in Alaric's rule or support for new leadership. The counting seemed to take forever, Bianca's heart hammering as she watched from her seat, feeling Alaric's steady calm through their bond. Finally, the results were announced. 2/3 of the council supported Alaric. Not unanimous, not even overwhelming, but enough. He would remain king. Marcus stood stiffly as the results were read, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. This isn't over. Yes, it is, Alaric said quietly. You lost, Marcus. Gracefully or not, you lost. Accept it and move on, or continue this vendetta and face actual consequences. The council dispersed slowly. Vampires congratulating Alaric, or studiously avoiding him, depending on how they'd voted. Bianca pushed through the crowd to reach him, and when she did, he pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. It's over, he murmured into her hair. You're safe. We're safe. For now, she said. Marcus isn't going to stop. Then we'll deal with him when necessary. But tonight, let's just celebrate. They returned to the cottage that night, exhausted but relieved. The political threat had passed, at least temporarily. Their bond was recognized, Alaric's rule secure. I've been thinking, Bianca said as they lay together on the couch, watching fire dance in the hearth, about the future, about immortality. Alaric went still. And? I'm not ready yet. But I think, eventually, I want it. I want forever with you. She turned to look at him. Not now, not while I'm still figuring out who I am as an artist, as a person. But someday when I'm ready, I want to choose this life. Choose you. Joy flooded through their bond so intensely it took her breath away. You mean it? I mean it. You're my soul bond, my love, my impossible miracle. I'm not ready to let that go after just one human lifetime. He kissed her then, deeply and thoroughly, pouring centuries of loneliness and hope into the connection. When they finally broke apart, both were smiling. We have time, he said. All the time you need to be certain. And when you're ready, I'll be honored to walk forever beside you. They spent the rest of the night talking about the future, where they'd travel, what she'd paint, how they'd navigate the challenges of an increasingly complicated world. Through their bond, Bianca felt Alaric's contentment, his deep and abiding peace. For the first time in 800 years, he wasn't just existing, he was living. And Bianca, who'd thought her life was over when her gallery closed and her ex sneered at her solitude, had found something impossible and beautiful. She'd found her soul bond, her vampire king, her forever. Marcus tried one more time, 3 months later. He and several loyal vampires attempted to ambush Bianca while she was alone at the gallery, thinking they could use her death to destroy Alaric's will to rule. But Alaric had anticipated the move, had guards in place that Marcus didn't know about. The attackers were caught, brought before the council, and Marcus was stripped of his lordship. Exiled from the eastern courts he'd ruled for centuries, Alina was installed as the new eastern lord, young but backed by Alaric's support. She ruled with compassion Marcus had never shown, and the eastern courts began to slowly transform. 2 years after the gala where everything changed, Bianca stood in the cottage looking out over the lake. Her gallery was thriving, her art celebrated, her life full of purpose and love. Behind her, Alaric wrapped cool arms around her waist, resting his chin on her shoulder. Ready? He asked softly. She turned in his embrace, looking up at the vampire king who'd become her everything. Ready. They'd decided together. She was ready for immortality, ready to walk beside him through centuries. The turning would be difficult, but they'd face it together, bonded in ways that transcended life and death. I love you, she said. I love you too. In this life and all the ones to come. As the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in golds and purples, Bianca Thorne made her choice. She chose love over fear, forever over safety, the vampire king over the ordinary life she'd once imagined. And somewhere in the modern world that still didn't quite believe in monsters, a soul bond became complete. A human and a vampire, bound by love that would outlast empires, creating a forever that began with a single decision to be brave. The end was just the beginning. And Bianca couldn't wait to see what eternity held.